Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Seth Adams. I'm the Land Conservation Director for Save Mount Diablo, and welcome to our BioBlitz 2023 recap. I want to tell you just a little bit about what BioBlitz is, and we're waiting around a little bit because we had quite a few more people signed up than have showed up, and hopefully they'll be signing in the next few minutes. But Save Mount Diablo started doing BioBlitzes in 2007, and as far as I know, we were the first organization in the Bay Area to do that. There were other kinds of species counts like Audubon bird counts and things like that, but we did the first 24-hour BioBlitz back in 2007 on our Irish Canyon property, and since then we've kind of had this mode of doing expert BioBlitzes in a 24-hour period, often on new properties. And doing investigations and getting a snapshot of the biodiversity of a place. With the pandemic, we started paying more attention to doing some dispersed BioBlitzes in order to keep people safe. And so we still did some expert stuff on specific properties, but we started working with the public, working with California Native Plant Society on doing a BioBlitz in the footprint of the August 2020 SCU fires. And after that fire happened, lasted for 44 days. It was the second largest fire in California history. We decided to concentrate on the footprint of the SCU fires for the next 3 years. It was our experience in the Morgan fire in 2013 that the Chemise curtain opened and closed in about 3 years. Regeneration happened, and that was a good period in which to catch fire followers, etc. You're going to be hearing from a variety of people about both what they saw this year at our 24-hour expert BioBlitz and perhaps at the dispersed BioBlitz as well throughout the northern part of the Diablo Range. But you're also going to be hearing about sort of people's assessments of what they've learned from the 3 years of examining this northern part of the Diablo Range that burned and how things have changed, whether regeneration is well underway, whether it's been slowed down. And I'll tell you that at the end of the year, we're going to be completing an audible guide about the burn area, the SCU fires area, with a lot of expert testimony added in. And you'll see a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last 3 years in our Diablo Range Revealed program, summarized in that audible guide that Joan Hamilton is working on. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sean Burke, our Land Programs Director, and get the program going.
Thank you for that, Seth. Our first speaker today will be Clint Estols from the California State Parks. He's been the acting superintendent of the Diablo Range District for the last about a year or so, and it's been a pleasure doing a number of projects with him, and he's going to give a quick little talk about our 24-hour experience. Go for it, Clint.
All right, thanks, Sean. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Hopefully this comes through. So before I get going, just I'm currently the acting district superintendent for the Diablo Range District of California State Parks, and that of course includes Mount Diablo. So I got to do a quick public service announcement. We are closing North Gate Road due to some of the storm damage and repairs on Mount Diablo starting Friday, and it'll be a 4-month closure, so just be aware of that. So I'd like to work that in. So the property that we visited just a couple of weeks ago for the 24-hour portion of the BioBlitz was the Alameda Tesla property, and I'm just going to orient folks here to that property if you're not aware of it. We have Tracy to the east here, and then a little more to the west. And then there's a road here, Corral Hollow Tesla Road. And we own, the Department of Parks and Rec, State Parks owns Carnegie SVRA and OHV Recreation Area. And in the late 90s purchased what is we call the Alameda Tesla property, also known as Tesla Park. So yeah, Sean and Seth approached me about doing a scientific collection effort out here with the objectives of collecting some fire-related data. The fire, the SCU Lightning Complex fire, did not quite make it this far to us. Luckily, we were definitely smoked in during that time, and felt the effects in other parts of our district, but not on the Alameda Tesla. So this became a focus for reference sites for the data that State Mount Diablo was collecting in other places. So through a couple, some pre-meetings, we were able to get a scientific collection permit effort in place, and it served kind of dual purposes. We had the fire data collection that we were doing, but we're also going through the state parks classification process at the same time. And that's part of our land use process, where you classify property into one of the various state park unit classifications, and that helps the underlying, define that underlying use, future use. And then familiar with the planning process, then comes general plan, EIR, and project level planning. So that's exciting. That's going to happen this next year. So we're excited to get high level scientists out there to collect some data for 24 hours. So try not to make this too long, but day of, I think it was May 5th to 6th, Cinco de Mayo. Great day, great way to spend your Cinco de Mayo being out here. We camped out at the Diablo Range District office. Some of the dam limited. We camped roughly 25 participants day one. State parks and State Mount Diablo provided shuttles to get back into these parts of the property, and this part and this part. And then obviously folks collected data. And then we came back, and there were some night surveys that went out, and then the next day did something similar, and then wrapped up at 2. We did have some areas off limits based on safety, like the mine site, and some other stuff, other areas based on some team species. Let me take a quick look at my notes, make sure I covered the items I wanted to cover. I think I did. So, and then another part of this, the reason I wanted State Mount Diablo to come out here, and we agreed to all this big effort, was we knew that they could bring in there's been a lot of interest in this property over the years. It was once planned for OHV expansion, no longer, but we knew there was a lot of interest. So we thought with State Mount Diablo's reach, we could bring in a lot of different folks at once and not string it along as far as interest goes. We've been keeping folks out of here based on staffing and planning efforts, and this was an opportunity for people that are interested to come out for a 24-hour period. So I am going to stop sharing and hand it off to my colleague, Nicole, who's the biologist on site, and she's going to share some of her field observations.
Hey, so I was fortunate enough to be able to go out with some of the experts, and we definitely saw some pretty cool things out there. One of the participants is permitted to handle sensitive amphibian species. So we were able to dip net, and we found California tiger salamander and California red-legged frog larvae. And this was the first time this year that the California red-legged frog had been observed at those sites. Because of the big rain events, it seems like that wasn't very, made things a little bit more difficult for that species to reproduce, but it was really great to, get record of those listed species out there. We did go out at night and looking for spadefoot toads. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful, but we did find some spadefoot tadpoles. And then, saw some amazing wildflowers and got to see a Lewis woodpecker, which is not very common. And I'm very thankful that we were able to have people come out with such a wide variety of expertise and help with knowing what's out there, especially with species that Clint and I may not be very familiar with. So I had a great time. So thank you so much for including me.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicole. And remember, for those of you who are Zooming in, if you have any questions, you can put those in the chat and we'll be able to respond to you as quickly as possible with that. Our next speaker will be Scott Hine. Thank you very much, Scott. Take it away, my friend.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, do you have my my share?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Well, first, before I get into my piece of the presentation, on behalf of Save Mount Diablo and everybody that participated, I'd really like to thank the folks from State Parks, Clint and Nicole, and everybody from their team who hosted us, allowed us to camp and take over their field office property and camp there. And then we had their folks shuttling us up to various parts of the property to be more efficient. And I know Nicole joined us on several of the hikes that we did, which was really nice to have her along. So many thanks to you for going to the trouble of hosting us and being such great hosts at it. What I'd like to do is just give sort of an overview of my impressions of the Tesla property. The 24 hours of the BioBlitz from the standpoint of conditions wasn't optimum. It was cold and windy on Friday, and then cold and rainy on Saturday morning. And so for some species, insects in particular, some birds and things hunkered down. And so from the standpoint of diversity and numbers of individuals and things, I think the numbers are probably knocked down a little bit. But that's only part of the story with Tesla. As Clint mentioned, this is a property that Save Mount Diablo has been working as part of a coalition to help protect in a more natural state. And for a lot of us, we'd worked on this for maybe 10 years or more. And this was our first opportunity to actually get on the property and see it firsthand. And that was the really exciting thing for me. I'm a birder, and so of course I was looking for birds. I'm interested in wildflowers and everything else, but the real opportunity here for me was to be able to have access and move around the property a little bit. And so let me get to, this is my GPS track, and I'll say that on both days, on Friday I was with Joan and Bruce Hamilton, as well as my wife Claudia, and then on Saturday we had Seth Adams, who came along with Nicole, and these are the areas we covered. So on Friday we went up to the high point of the property, which is at the bottom of this GPS track. And then on Saturday morning, we went and basically followed Rail Hollow Creek out to where it reached the boundary with private property. And then for an hour or so, we then went up Mitchell Ravine, which is on the right-hand side. And so we covered actually quite a bit of the property and some different habitats. And I'll show you a few photos of those places. So the first thing you notice with Tesla is it's really steep and rugged, and this photo shows that. And so deep canyons, steep slopes, and we were fortunate that we were able to get shuttled up to the very top of the property at the beginning on Friday. And when you get up to the top, this was fairly unexpected to me, although if I had looked at the topo map carefully, I probably could have figured it out. At the top of the property is this big, broad plateau, open grassland. So you have these steep canyons, steep slopes coming up to this big grassland plateau at the top with scattered oak trees and rock outcrops and things like that. Just spectacular views from up here. That's Joan and Bruce and Claudia recording observations as we move through the upper parts of the property. There are some ponds on the property, so these likely have at times California tiger salamanders and California red-legged frogs. And you can see the hills east of Livermore and then dropping down into the Central Valley. So views all the way out into the Central Valley and beyond from this high plateau. And this is looking down. If you look at the lower left of this photo, you'll see the Tesla Road, and Tesla Road has been closed because of a slide, and that was both good for us and complicated things a bit. It complicated things because access to the site was out through Tracy and I-5 and then up Tesla Road from there. But it also meant there wasn't a lot of traffic on the road. So several of us at times, were hiking along the road to go to and from the base camp. And the fact that the road was closed and couldn't be a commute route made things a little simpler for that. And there were a lot of this yellow calochorus, the Calochorus luteus in the grassland up there, which was beautiful. The yellow Mariposa lily. And then on the steep slopes on the way up to the top, and as we hike back down, there's a spot where there's a chaparral slope that probably burned in a relatively recent fire. I think Clint had told us, and it was just covered with the light vegetation you see there is bush mallow, and there were tree-sized bush mallow in this slope. So it's going to be, if it isn't spectacular now, it will be, at some point, along with the black sage and other chaparral species. But that was really fun to see, because a lot of times, except after a fire, when you see bush mallow, it's one or two small shrubs, and this was a whole hillside that was almost covered in it. And then Nicole mentioned that we, probably the bird highlight for us was the Lewis's woodpecker. They tend to move around a lot and be unpredictable, and so you always enjoy when you can see them. And Bruce Hamilton spotted this one on top of the near ridge in one of the snags that are on top of the near ridge. Made a good spotting of that. So that was fun to see in that location. And then on Saturday, we basically followed Corral Hollow Creek up to the boundary with neighboring private property. And the water was still flowing. And it was really fun to see that and hike along it and know that it's a super valuable resource for wildlife in that area. And being able to see the water, after many years of drought, even this late in spring was really great to see. And one of the groups, this was at the mouth of Mitchell Ravine. One of the groups found a tarantula, so that was probably the arachnid highlight for us. An out-of-season tarantula. Normally, you see them in the fall. And then this is a ground level view of Mitchell Ravine, and it's pretty obvious that there are times when a huge amount of water flows through Mitchell Ravine, and you can tell from the width of this wash. But there was no water to speak of in the ravine at this time. And as we hiked up the ravine, this is a whole hillside. The ethereal spears and wildflowers in general were pretty spectacular. This is the first time I've seen a whole population of this white form of ethereal spear. Normally you have sort of the blue purple form of ethereal spear, but this was a whole hillside of the white form, which was fun to see. And then there's a really large desert olive stand that goes up one of the hillsides. And desert olive is more of a, a Mojave Desert type species, and these are probably remnant populations from historic times when the climate was warmer. And this section at the bottom was actually completely covered in mara or manroot, wild cucumber. So the wild cucumber mara vines growing all over the desert olive. So that was interesting to see. And I'll end my presentation by saying 24 hours was not enough time to explore this property. This is Mitchell Ravine, which was where we were on the last afternoon. And we had sort of gotten, an hour or half an hour in when we felt like we needed to turn around to get back to camp in time. But I think we could have spent the whole day exploring Mitchell Ravine and the upper parts of Mitchell Ravine going back up into the park. And so hopefully we'll have an opportunity to do that sometime in the future. So those are my thoughts on Tesla. It was a wonderful experience to be able to visit the property, and I hope to be able to do it again sometime. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. And yeah, thank you very much, Clint and Nicole, for allowing us to have the opportunity to go and explore Tesla further. I agree with Scott. You could spend many years there, like Clint, I know you have, and Nicole, you're getting closer to that, and definitely not see everything. So it's a beautiful place. For those of you who have interest in seeing some of the individual observations that we made, please check our iNaturalist project that we have right now, the Save Mount Diablo Tesla BioBlitz project. If you go through iNaturalist, you'll be able to find it in there by researching projects. And right now we have hundreds of observations that people have uploaded. So it's a real exciting project. And yes, thank you all again. Thank you, Scott, for your great photos, and Clint and Nicole for the opportunity to explore there and for spending time with us. Up next is our very own Francesca Hendricks, and she'll be talking about the deer zone. So Frenchie, take it away.
Hi, everyone. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. I know there has been a little bit of a lag, so let me get that going. All right, Sean, maybe you can let me know if, let me see here. Still loading, okay. All right, so hi everybody. My name is Francesca Hendricks. I'm the new Education and Outreach Associate for Save Mount Diablo. I will be doing the debrief on the deer zone area, which covers Round Valley, Morgan Territory, Los Vaqueros, and it roughly covers 3,000 acres of the burn zone from the SCU fire complex that burned back in 2020. All right, this should be my next slide, giving it a little time as I know there's a little bit of a lag. So hopefully you can see my next slide. So once the SCU Lightning Fire Complex fire swept through the Deer Valley area in 2020, the Save Mount Diablo stewardship team, which consisted of Denise, Haley, Roxana, and Sean, went out in 2021 to see what they can find in the deer zone area. And as you can see from these two pictures, it's pretty barren and fire swept, pretty open, not a lot of vegetation at all. All right, my next slide. Here is some more of the landscape. So yeah, little to no vegetation. And these rock outcroppings that you can see were not visible prior to the fire. So something that Seth Adams had said earlier, it's like a chemise curtain. So once the fire went through, the chemise curtain has kind of went back, has risen, and we can see these rock outcroppings that we had not seen prior to the fire. So as the SMD stewardship team was scouting around this area, Then you should see in my next slide, oops, let me go back here. One more. You should see the amazing fire poppy. So this was very exciting. Denise Castro, which was the previous education and outreach associate, so you can see I had big shoes to fill. She had found the fire poppy out in this area along with the rest of the SMD stewardship team. It was very exciting. They had a rough estimate between 1,000 to 2,000 blossoms that they had seen. And at the time, it was the only fire poppy observation seen in the whole SCU fire complex footprint until the recent sighting at Henrico, which was this year in 2023. So very exciting news. Along with the fire poppy in the area was large concentrations of the Mount Diablo fairy lantern, which is endemic to the area. Also, a few sightings of the golden eardrops, which I will show a pic in my following slides, and whispering bells as well. All right, now moving forward to my next slide, which is now going to the same zone, the deer zone, but now in 2022. So you can see here the Save Mount Diablo stewardship team, along with Parker, little Zoe down here below, and myself went back out to the deer zone to see what observations we can see for this following year. And you can note that the landscape is not quite as barren as 2021. Even I noticed right here beside Parker is quite a bit of whispering bells. And then right above here looks like some yerba santa, and you can see a lot more green. And so furthermore, in the 2022 observations of the deer zone is you can still see the rock outcroppings. They are still visible, a lot more vegetation, but you can slowly start to see the differences from the previous year. A lot more green is happening, a lot more growth and regeneration. And last year in 2022, we also noted the fire poppy. It prevailed for year 2. And this was the largest rough estimate of the blossoms. We saw about 7,500 blossoms of the fire poppy. So yeah, we were really, really excited. So this was great seeing it for second year in a row. And also with the fire poppy, again, we noted large quantities of the Mount Diablo fairy lantern. And here are those golden eardrops, just beautiful in color. And also the whispering bells that we saw in the previous slide that was that bush next to Parker. All right, now we fast forward to this year, the 2023 deer zone observation. So early in April, I went back out to the area with my friend Dre and a volunteer for Save Mount Diablo, both our dogs, and we ventured out to see what it looked like this year. And as you can see, the fire footprint is not quite as visible this third year out. The rock outcroppings are still visible from a distance, but as this middle picture shows, I did take that picture more from a distance. Is that rock outcroppings are harder to get to, a lot more bushwhacking with the vegetation growing. And my next slide shows that, yes, there's a lot more vegetation this third year. I did note that this picture right here, the phyllon, was a new observation for me this third year. I did not note seeing that the 2 previous years going out to the deer zone. Here's some more whispering bells that I did see this year in less quantities, but it's still out there. And along with large quantities of the Mount Diablo fairy lanterns, they're still going strong this third year. Lots and lots, I would say, of the yerba santa that's starting to take over the burn zone. And I must say, if you do go out to this area, the morning glory vines are quite a tripping hazard. They did wrap around my ankles a few times and try to drag me down. So if you do happen to venture out there, be very careful. Another thing I did note this year was this was the highest concentration I've seen of the golden eardrops in the deer zone. Definitely best year for it out here, definitely showing off and taking advantage of the nutrient-rich soil and the conditions most likely of the tons of water we got due to the storms and the rain. So if you go out there, yeah, take note of all the golden eardrops. It's beautiful yellow fields. And my next slide shows, so third year in a row, the fantastic, marvelous fire poppy has shown itself again, 3 years in a row. Very exciting. Although I did take a rough estimate, lower blossom count, maybe about 300 to 500 blossoms I've seen. I love this picture here. As you can see, it's still emerging from the previous fire footprint. And over here in the middle picture, you can see one little poppy still shining and a lot of the seed heads up here. And then the whispering bell kind of peeking from the side, or sorry, not whispering bell, the golden eardrops peeking from the right side here. But I did notice this year, the fire poppy has a lot of competition with other vegetation. So like that morning glory vine I was saying that likes to hold onto your ankles and pull you down is doing the same thing to the fire poppy here. So fire poppies are having a tough competition this year, but they're still going strong, which is great, great news. And now bringing it to the deer zone again, all 3 years, I wanted to put up 3 pictures to compare. So first picture here was 2021, very barren landscape, very little to no vegetation. And middle picture 2022, you can start to see that regeneration is underway. And third year here, this past year, 2023, this is from this past April, you can barely tell that a fire has swept through. If it was not for these burned trees right here, you almost wouldn't know that a fire has gone through. So I would definitely say through my observations that regeneration is definitely underway and going strong. And again, like Seth said, that chamise curtain is going to start closing soon. And a lot of these rock outcroppings you might not be able to see in these next years or next season, just because vegetation is going super strong. So that was just a touch on my observations, but I did upload hundreds of observations along with other fire follower participants. And like Sean said earlier, these are, if you do go to iNaturalist, these are the projects that you can take a look at everybody's observations. The first one is the California Fire Follower 2020. And I recently looked and they had about 153,000 observations and 6,000 species. And this was an accumulation of all 3 years. And the second project is the California Fire Follower 2020 SCU Lightning Complex. And they have about 15,000 observations with 1,500 species listed. And then of course, our recent Save Mount Diablo 2023 BioBlitz Tesla Park. We have about 552 observations and 285 species listed. So definitely check out these projects to see what everybody uploaded. You can always be a part of these projects as well and upload your observations from the SCU fire footprint. And thank you so much. If you have any questions or want me to send you a direct link of those INAT projects, feel free to email me at fhendricks@savemountdiablo.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Frenchie. Yeah, that's been an incredible exploration in that area. So, you know, for all of you, these last couple of years in the SCU burn zone has been an open to the public BioBlitz event that we've been advertising in coordination with California Native Plant Society. So it's been open to the public for everybody to get out and be a part of and list observations on the iNaturalist page, whether that's plants or animals or lichen on geology. All the information that people can find is incredible to basically start to catalog on iNaturalist. And as you can see, there's been tons of observations. So please check that out and become a part of it if you haven't already. Our next contestant will be Haley Sutton, our Land Stewardship Associate. Haley, go for it.
Oh, oops, there we go. Thanks, Sean. Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen before talking a bit about our Henry Coe State Park explorations. Alrighty, so you should be seeing a cacophony of photos here from the last few years of exploring Henry Coe State Park with our team. We did have staff go out each of the last 3 years, but I was only there this year and this past year, so I'll be focusing these observations from my experience. We all had the pleasure of getting to attend the Backcountry Weekend the last couple of years, which is an event that the Pine Ridge Association hosts at Henry Coe, allowing the public, so equestrians, hikers, bikers, nature enthusiasts of all sorts, to come out and access an area of the park that's not normally available to the public. Let me switch to the next slide. So here's a general map of Henry Coe State Park. It's a little busy, but I just wanted to point out a few things. This whole area is 87,000 acres. It's also the largest state park in Northern California. Typically, if you look at that blue star on the west or left-hand side of the screen, that's the main HQ for the state park. That's how people typically can access the state park. But it's pretty far away from where the actual SCU fire footprint was, which I'll show in the next slide. But down below this yellow star at the Dowdy Ranch entrance is where we were able to access the state park for this Backcountry Weekend event, allowing visitors to get into the park at a deeper point where you're immediately like surrounded by the fire footprint. So it's like automatically right off the bat, you're able to see the huge impact that that fire made over the landscape. This yellow border here just represents the area that we generally focused the last couple of years where our feet could take us. So some 5-mile days, some 12 to 13-mile days, we were able to explore more or less area within this point. And this black star represents our home base, where we were able to camp at the Orostemba Wilderness area. So here we have that previous map we were just looking at alongside the SCU fire footprint map of Henry Coe State Park, which is generally around the southern portion of the fire footprint from 2020, with that yellow border indicating generally where we were looking at. So you can see that the pink background here is all area of the SCU fire footprint juxtaposed over the green Henry Coe State Park area. So the parking P that's on the left-hand side, that's how people can typically access the state park. So they would have to traverse quite a few miles just to be able to get into the fire footprint. Whereas this time around, we were able to get right inside right off the bat, which was a really awesome experience to have. And we're very grateful for this experience. Now I wanted to give a brief outline of where we were exploring. This is a picture I took of the park map that I have with some general outlines of our big days that we did the last couple of years. So in 2022, this pink outline, we started off at the Orostemba Wilderness and did a route over to Mississippi Lake and back. This area is definitely a lot more ridgeline, very exposed. And I'll show a bunch of photos on the next slides after this. Whereas this past year, we went a little bit farther out, all the way up to Jackrabbit Lake, which we can see from my cursor here. And going up, I guess, counterclockwise, we got a lot more of this ridge up top, a lot more exposure. It got very, very hot. We were really excited to get down to the lake. And then the second half of the route back was along the Orostemba Creek Road, which involved a lot of creek crossings, given this really wet rain year that we had, which provided some nice relief at the end of our day, but a very different type of habitat, given that we were lower and more surrounded by canopy in a woodland area. And this green is just a brief 5-mile loop that we did both years. So we were able to see the differences in this very specific route as well, which is great to see. Here are a couple images from the Ponderosa, which is the Pine Ridge Association newsletter that came out back in 2020, right after the fires happened, just as a general sense of how burn the area got, compared to some of these images that we'll be seeing just shortly. I did want to make note that there's this note here at the bottom about how there's this perfect mosaic pattern of vegetation, which you can see a lot on this next slide here. These are images taken from 2022, and it's very obvious where the fire was hitting the landscape at different levels of intensity. At some points where it was, completely hitting the chaparral, or just, clearing out some of the chaparral without completely removing all of this vegetation down to the root here. So all these images kind of have that general sense of this mosaic that we were seeing a couple years ago. And then this year we went back out, and you can still see that mosaic, although now there is a bit more of a green shrubby growth that's coming back in, as a lot of these plants are starting to get more established and continue to grow over the last few years. We were noticing here there's a ton of golden eardrops. This past year, Frenchie's standing next to golden eardrop that's basically as tall as she is, if not taller, at about 5.5 feet tall. So that's like pretty impressive how tall all of this is getting. You can still see the impacts on the trees from the fire, but the undergrowth is surely coming back and is growing lusher than it had been from the year prior. And so I wanted to point out a few of the more exciting botanical finds that we had from the last few years. So first of all, we have this Leptosiphon grandiflorus, the large flowered Leptosiphon. We saw it both last year and this year, which was a really awesome sighting. And as you can see here, they presented themselves in large swaths of abundance. So it was, quite amazing to come across a bunch of areas where you were seeing a lot of these flowers across the landscape. And given that we did have a lot of rain, there was a larger prevalence of grass as well, growing quite tall at some points. And so then having these bright pockets of pink amidst that was a pretty amazing sight to see. And then last year, we observed the Quercus spumosa, the nettle scrub oak, amidst the many oak seedlings that we were seeing out along our hike explorations. We did not knowingly see it this year. Who knows if we spotted it, but did not happen to make that note in that record. But those are definitely out there, which was an awesome find for us last year. This year's big find for us that we were very excited about was the most beautiful jewel flower. You can see on the left, Roxana has her hand at the top of one of them growing. They're a little hard to see here as they're mixed in with the chia, but essentially this one goes all the way up to where the top of Roxana's handed, which is awesome. And so this is along the route that we were taking on that long route that I was showing up on the ridge. So this is definitely an exposed landscape. Clearly there's a lot of rock exposure, very rocky habitat. And on this one side is where the slope was going back up into the hillside. And then on the other side of the hill behind us here, it dropped off. So definitely that habitat where we tend to see jewel flowers is very cool for us to have this find. And we were just walking and talking and keeping our spirits up. And suddenly I looked at the side of this hill and noticed a jewel flower that we hadn't spotted yet. So that was really cool how it just, came out of nowhere. So now a bit of a few slides of just this huge collage of photos that we were seeing the last couple of years, just to show quite the array of species that we were identifying, including snapdragons and various thistles, more Leptosiphon, mallows, Mariposa lilies. Like this doesn't even, represent probably half of the species we saw each year. But each find was really exciting, especially going out with Denise and Roxana last year and Frenchie and Roxana this year. A lot of enthusiastic people to be around to help really, keep the morale up and stoke high to keep finding and spotting all these plants amidst an already gorgeous landscape. So this has been, a really fortunate experience to have. here are some images from this year, some of which are the same. A few things that were newer for us that we didn't spot last year was this Santa Clara thorn mint. We did see this last year at a different property different site that we were exploring, part of the footprint, but not at Henrico State Park. So that was really exciting that we saw a few spots where that was, as well as this Clarkia species was a new find for us too. And then this year there were definitely plenty of this white fairy lantern, lots of the whispering bells, and huge hillsides of the golden eardrops. It seems that they're staying strong over the last few years. And the peregrine thistle has also been a cool site for Henrico State Park. That's different from the Mount Diablo area that we're generally exploring. We're used to seeing the Venus thistle, which is from this past slide here. Typically we'll see those around the mountain over near us, but the peregrine thistle was really cool, kind of stark contrast to the reds that we're used to seeing. And here's another set of images from last year as well. This year we did see quite a few larkspurs. That tended to be, I think, the species of that was the most prolific along all the different grasslands that we were seeing, that just kind of sprinkled across the entire time we were exploring. A lot of these, were all really cool finds for us. So this is great to see them all in one place and think about how many different, exciting, diverse observations we were able to make over the past few years. So a few cool wildlife sightings for us. We did come across this giant rattlesnake that was hanging out on the ridge portion of our second day hike, or this past year's hike. I got a little too close to it, didn't realize that I was so close to a rattlesnake. I was looking at the flowers on the hillside beyond it, and then it warned us. So we definitely backed off. But was a very big individual here. And another highlight of this past year's visit was seeing the scorpions. Part of the backcountry weekend is there are a number of experts that are volunteers that are associated with the state park that come out and offer different hikes or outings for people to participate in. And we opted to join them for an evening UV light exploration just around the Oristimba Corral where we were staying, to look in search for these scorpions. And I'd say there were maybe, over 20 of us looking with a handful of these lights, and we had to walk a ways, and then suddenly you were able to spot them really easily, because these bodies of the scorpions really light up with the UV light. And they're also very small. So if you look at this image, you can see this is just like a leaf, a pretty small leaf. And so that's how small these, as a scale for the size of these scorpions, I'd say probably about the size of a larger paperclip, a few inches in size. And some of us were able to get some really sweet images. So this is a really cool, nice contrast to all of the daytime observations that we were making. And then lastly, I just wanted to give a brief total of all of the Henrico observations from the last few years. So this is the CNPS, California Native Plant Society of Fire Followers iNaturalist project that Frenchie was mentioning previously. This is a shot that I grabbed from today. So that's how many observations we had as of this morning, 15,382 total across the entire SCU Lightning Complex over the last few years. But as for Henrico State Park area specifically, there have been just under 5,000 observations, making up about 744 species from 726 identifiers. So there are a lot of people that are getting involved with this project, which is super awesome. And it's been great that we've been able to partner with CNPS on this project for the third year in a row. They will be, it looks like, continuing this project, this iNaturalist project for the next year. And if you're not familiar with iNaturalist, the way that it works is if you are uploading photos that are within the region and within the time frame of a project, they'll usually get auto-populated into it. So if any of you are out there and taking a part in our 2-week BioBlitz, or just going out anytime in the last few years to Henrico State Park, any of those observations that you're making and uploading have been added into this project, which is a really cool way to auto-populate and see a grand, data set of all these different species that we've been looking at over the last few years, and how their prevalence is changing as we're moving farther and farther away from that fire in 2020. And so this is all I've got. Thank you all so much for listening.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Haley. It really makes me want to get out to Henrico. It's such an awesome place. And the last couple of years that the 4 of you have been able to have out there look incredible. Seth and Ted and I were able to get out there the first year, but I haven't been out there since. So hopefully I can get out there again soon. These images are super inspiring. So thank you for that very much. It's my turn now. So let me pull up my document here and share my screen. And I'm going to talk about Del Puerto Canyon, which has become one of my favorite places. So as this loads up, share screen is loading, it says. Is this, can anybody see this yet?
Not yet. There we go.
There we go. So the last couple of years, basically since the fire hit in August of 2020, I've been really excited to get out to Del Puerto. I made my first trip out there in December of 2020. And this quick little Pressy really is going to just kind of scratch the surface on all the visits we've made to this incredible canyon over the last couple of years. Somehow I'm going to tie in 3 visits that we've had this year into this presentation, as well as the dozen or so other visits that I have made to the area in the previous 2 years. So yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that in 10 minutes, but I'm going to do my best, and hopefully these photos inspire you to get out to the area and explore it. It's absolutely a magical place. So my first trip out there this year, essentially a group of 7 of us got into the area right away, and we noticed right off the bat that it was much colder there and things were much further behind than they had been the previous years in the month of April. So we were able to see super lush green hillsides that had burned in the 2020 fire complex, as well as a variety of wildflowers that were showing up in large splotches, much like this with the fiddleneck, as well as the tufted poppies. And looking on the ridge lines, you can still see some of these, dominating wildflower mosaics on some of these grasslands, where there'll be, hundreds of thousands of individuals, like in this fiddleneck here on this one little hillside. And that's really been kind of the amazing thing on this grasslands that burned that we've seen in the last few years. There have been these huge splotches of wildflowers, these almost monocultures, if you will, of species. We still were, lucky enough to see golden eagles flying around in this area. And I've been real fortunate to have befriended Patrick Kohler and Doug Bell over the years. Both individuals were with us on this particular first trip out into the area. And it's almost like they're conjurers of golden eagles. Within a few minutes of getting out of the car, one flew away or flew in front of us and almost picked up a little ground squirrel. So golden eagles in this area are definitely super populated in the area. There's multiple nesting territories that we've seen, as well as bald eagles in the area. So that's just one incredible species that always gets me excited to see. But, looking further into the canyon, we're looking at these chaparral habitats that, had burned really intensely as far as this fire is concerned. And, this particular photo here, the first year we drove through here, it was basically just rock and ash. And as you can see, just like these other photos, this mosaic has really been incredible to see, with chamise coming back, mallow coming back, yerba santa coming back, all those kind of coming back, and game busters as kind of the base really for these chaparral habitats. Black sage is another one that we've seen kind of peppered in here, though not as much in the Del Puerto Canyon area yet. The creek really is, you know, the main event, if you will, the main positive thing of this particular canyon. It's basically the carver of this canyon, Del Puerto Creek. And this particular year with all the rains, it was really moving through the area, and it continues to do so as I was just there last week. And it hasn't changed much from this image, which was taken on April 7th. So this is a very Shire-like image, if you will. The first year after the fire, other than these oak trees, this area was completely burned. So on a positive note, if you think about that, this was an area of low intensity burn, as these oaks are still looking very healthy in this area, whereas all the grasses were basically erased for a season or so. But looking, you know, deeper into this image and the background there, you can still see areas where, you know, there is a more intense burn. And again, you know, this particular creek is just really magnificent, what it does to the geology here and how it really, you know, separates the sides of this canyon. I mean, this canyon really comes down to an area that's about, you know, as wide as 15 feet in some places and rises 1,500 feet on either side. So it's a really deep canyon with incredible diversity in species, and it's doing really fantastically as far as regeneration is concerned, given how dry it's been the last couple of years in this area, and this one incredibly wet year that it's had in this area with at least 2 or 3 different snow events. On this particular trip, we had to get higher up into the hills before we started seeing some of these other, you know, wildflowers that had really begun to map the area in April from previous years. So in previous years, we were seeing hundreds of thousands of shooting stars in the area and gold fields as well. We had to get up a little higher where it was a little bit warmer than down in these canyons below, though it did snow in those areas as well, which kind of stymied, you know, a lot of the regeneration we saw on the first trip. As we got, you know, into this next trip that I just went on last week, I'm really happy that I got sick 2 weeks prior, because it really helped the regeneration and basically the spring blossoms to come to fruition this particular year. Had I gone out on April 21st like I had originally planned, we wouldn't have seen half of the diversity that we saw on this particular day. It would have just been too early. So the fact that I got sick was a blessing. As you can see in this image here, everything on the far side of that canyon, actually everything in this particular image had burned in 2020. And so we're starting to see chaparral coming back in the foreground here. And in the background too, you're seeing some of these mosaics of chaparral starting to piece themselves back together and expand over this landscape. You know, we continue to see magnificent wildlife in this particular area. You know, the killdeer down in the creek, as well as the blue herons, sorry, the green herons were active. On the first year, actually, there were some spotted mountain lions in the area that had made it through the fire. So that was pretty incredible to see. That's actually, it was an iNaturalist image that I didn't share here, but figured I'd talk about. But it's just great to see, you know, birds in this particular area, as it's known for being a fantastic area to go see a wide variety of bird diversity. You know, as we get further along the creek here and start crossing the creek and going into the Menhir day use area, which is an area that I've been studying for, you know, the last 3 seasons, the Menhir day use area in Frank Rains Regional Park essentially is an area that was kind of put aside for hunting. But when the fire kind of went through this area, you know, hunting isn't as active as it once was, though I have been there on a December day and hung out with a guy who was, you know, hunting rabbits and wasn't having too successful a day, but nonetheless, it traditionally was used for hunting. And right now we're utilizing it for hunting wildflowers. So I had never seen the rain orchid that's in this image before, or this delphinium down below. These are 2 new individuals for me that I hadn't seen on previous years that I was really excited to see. You know, I would imagine this has a lot to do with the incredible rain events that this area had this past year. You know, going further up into the hills in the Menhir area, you can still see signs of where The pine trees were burned. You know, these grasslands originally were completely removed, but now we're starting to see tufted poppies come into this area in a pretty strong amount, pretty strong quantity, as well as chamise is starting to stump sprout and spread out in the area. There are also, you can't see in this image, but some really small claytonia kind of in this particular area, and there are probably about 100,000 of them that kind of peppered themselves in and around these buckwheats here. So pretty cool. As we got further up into the hills, you know, the chaparral areas, like I was mentioning before, is really starting to cluster up and come back together. Yerba Santa and chamise are definitely the dominators in this area, as well as these mallows here. But we're also seeing some invasive grasses coming back and some really cool wildflowers. As you can see, we have the calochortus here, some goldfields, there's tar plant in here. And if those of you with a keen eye in the background are seeing some of these golden eardrops here, which we had never seen in this area. So again, I think this has a lot to do with the rain that we'd seen. And we were really excited to see that. For the last 3 years, we've seen the whispering bells in the area, the globegilia, which is another pretty rare flower that we've continued to see in pretty high populations in the area, and some incredible delphinium species as well. Some pretty rare flowers, actually, we've been seeing too, one of which is one of my favorites now. It's Brewer's Clarkia, or Clarkia breweri, named after David Brewer, as well as this fountain thistle here and the Santa Clara thorn mint as well. So, you know, the more we go into this area, the more rare plants we start to see, and it's just really exciting to see how quickly these species turn over. If you're in this area 1 week, there's no way you're going to see the same things the following week. It's just too dry. The things are rapidly changing. Again, you know, I mentioned some of these incredible calochortus we were seeing, some of these tufted poppies and goldfield, as well as California chicory, which is another flower I hadn't seen in the area the previous years. But really, the golden eardrops were kind of this, again, you know, not to steal this from anyone else, but that really has been the showstopper this year in all of these areas, as well as last year too, in areas like the deer zone we were seeing it. But this was the first year we had seen it in Del Puerto Canyon. We saw it in the Menir de Use area, and also in one spot along the hill, and we were really excited to see such healthy golden eardrops. These, you know, much like the images that Haley had shared, were 4.5, 5, 6 feet tall. We also saw hillsides of the Allium crispum, which is a pretty rare wild onion. We were excited to see that. We'd never seen that before. And, you know, these grasslands, as we started moving up higher into the hill, they're really starting to come back in such a way where you wouldn't necessarily think that there had been such an intense fire earlier, you know, this decade, really, 3 years back. I mean, you can look down into, you know, the background of this photo, or lower down in these lower elevations where it's drier, and you can see these, you know, these charred trees, but these grasslands are really starting to regenerate, as well as these chaparral areas that we can see in the distance here. So it's a real exciting thing to see. In my travels, I've been fortunate enough to get into some private ranches that are in the Del Puerto area. These particular images here are of one of those ranches, and I just wanted to share these with everybody just so they can get a feel of what this particular area looked like last year after the burn. So some of these deep canyons, you know, they burned much more intensely, and yet they still had some of the same incredible diversity that we were sharing before, with chaparral species starting to repopulate in a mosaic-like manner. And this particular area is very rich in species as well. Bald eagles, golden eagles, pond turtles, yellow-legged frogs. Those were just 3 or 4 of the individuals we saw on this particular day, but it's an enormous ranch and an enormous, you know, landscape, including Del Puerto and San Antonio, and all the way out to Mount Hamilton and into Henry Cove. So species in this area is extremely rich. And again, we were seeing the Brewer's Clarkia in this particular area in this burn zone, and the blazing star, which is a pretty incredible wildflower too. It's, I wanted to share that with everyone just because it's absolutely beautiful. And in the previous years, we were seeing those, in the hundreds, if not thousands, along the roadways. So looking back last year, as I mentioned, we were seeing these just swaths of shooting stars. We were seeing, a much more kind of blank canvas on some of these hills, and juxtaposed with some of the previous images, you're really starting to see some incredible regeneration in these hills. Some of these wildflowers are, as mentioned in other photos or images, they're just monocultures in this area, and it's almost, you don't want to say it's a super bloom because that's way overused, but it's a really incredible area to go and see high concentrations of individual species in a burn zone. This particular image I took a couple years back. This is one of the first tours that I led out in the area, and you can see this is a photo I took in the wintertime. Not only has it been very intensely grazed, but you can see, just how intense some of this burn zone is as you look at some of these chaparral plants, and you kind of look all the way out into the background here. You really get a feel of how intense this fire really was when it first touched down. Now, looking at this photo is actually taken from my first trip out in the area in December 12th, 2020. And looking across the road here, this entire hillside burned. The previous photo I just showed, or 2 slides back, that is essentially an area covered in tufted poppies now. So pretty incredible to see just how quickly this regeneration happens. This is an image of the Menhir Deus area on that exact same trail that I was showing some of the wildflower diversity that I just shared, but this was in February of 2021. So this was a year where they probably got 5 or 6 inches of rain. And this was in February. You would expect this to be a lot more lush if you were thinking about Mount Diablo in February. Del Puerto in a drought, definitely not so much after a fire, but it's incredible to see when you think of some of these previous photos I shared with you, just how far this place has come in such a short amount of time after such an intense fire. And of course, the golden eagles continue to be prevalent in the area, and that's a very important thing for any number of reasons. The area has some of the highest concentration of nesting golden eagles on Earth. So that's, an incredible statistic in and of itself, and it's incredible to be able to witness that. So until we meet again, we'll continue to do studies like this in these areas, do the best we can to learn as much as we can about regeneration after events like this. And really, as we expand our focal point, further south into the Diablo Range, just getting out and learning about these places, learning how they respond to a variety of different management types, whether they're natural or, human inflicted. It's incredible to get into these areas and begin to understand exactly what we're getting into. So thank you very much. That is it for me with my Del Puerto talk. And yeah, does anyone have any questions? I think that's pretty much it as far as speakers are concerned. If anyone has any questions, I'll give you a couple minutes, put it in the chat. We could do our best to, talk about that. If not, we can questions via email as well. So the first question I got is, don't grazing cows affect native grasslands? So yes, they do. And in a lot of ways, it's a give and take. So grazing cattle can be a great tool for fire abatement. It can be a great tool for when used with, a variety of different grazing regimes to help promote native grassland repopulation. And really at this point in California's history, cattle grazing in a lot of these open spaces, thinking specifically of these regional parks, they've become kind of synonymous with one another as a management tool. And, cows can get a bad rap for a lot of reasons, and that's not necessarily justified. Cattle can be an incredible tool if used properly to really focus in on doing wildland regeneration projects. So anyone else like to add anything to that? Okay, the next question is, let's see, just came up and went away, Q&A. So one of them is about the Allium crispum explosion this year. Is that fire, wet winter, or both? It could be a bit of both. So we hadn't seen it in the previous 2 years of exploring it. And after this rain year, you know, it's how intense it was, we definitely started seeing it in a variety of different places. So we're excited to see that. It's not technically a fire follower, I don't believe. But as far as wild onions are, it's definitely one of the rarer wild onions you can see. And we've also seen it in a variety of different colors too, from this extreme red that I just showed you all the way to like a whitish color and everything in between.
I just wanted to address the question about, you mentioned some of the plants as being rare. Is that because the fires are so rare and these plants are fire followers? And I wanted to give you a sense. Some of you know that Save Mount Diablo is expanding our geographic range down the Diablo Range, 200 miles from Carquinez Strait, across 12 counties down to Kern County. And we're currently doing advocacy in the 7 northern of those 12 counties. At the end of the year, we'll be considering adding the final 5 counties to our advocacy efforts. What we're really doing is popularizing the Diablo Range and doing an exploration and getting to know areas that very few people know, and almost no one knows all of them. And the reason for that is most of the Diablo Range, 76% of it is in private hands, especially giant ranches. And it's kind of a research desert. Lots and lots of 3/4 of the area almost hasn't been researched at all. And so as we had the opportunity to see what we're going to do after the SCU fires, we said, this is our chance to explore the area. It's our chance to start filling in that research desert and using crowdsourcing with people and iNaturalists to start getting more and more observations for the area. And we typically try to go to big private areas or areas that haven't been researched very well, like Tesla, to fill in more of that biological biodiversity information that's going to help us in preserving more of these areas. So the reason a lot of these plants are rare is because the Diablo Range is rugged, it's arid, it's a place that's forcing evolution faster than in lots of other places. And all those exposures and microclimates and different kinds of geology result in a lot of complicated soils, which support a lot of complicated plants, which are evolving to fit very different places. We know from the research that does exist, places like Mount Diablo, Mount Hamilton, Pinnacles, Henry Cove, you can pick out any one of those and you can say, this place has 10 or 20% of all of California's native plant species. And we know that if we look at some of the other areas that aren't as well known or that are in private hands, we're going to find the same thing, because this is a plate boundary in which there's been a lot of uplift. There's a lot of rare mineral soils, a lot of serpentine, and all of those things are associated with lots of rare plants. We know we're going to find them, but we have to do the work. So we're looking at a variety of ways of encouraging research in the Diablo Range to get more people out there. And to do the scientific research that's going to support the decades of preservation to come as we work on protecting the spine of California, the area between the Bay and the Salinas River and the San Joaquin River, 200 miles from Mount Diablo South. There are a lot of rare plants there because the conditions cause them to evolve. A lot of endemic plants only found in specific areas. And that's partly why it's so exciting. The SCU fire was just an opportunity to concentrate on a specific place, a footprint of the fire. And we'll be looking for other fire footprints. There will be more. And we'll be looking at other ways of exploring the Diablo Range. We did a series of web posts and videos and things like that for the last 3 years, called Diablo Range Revealed. I've already mentioned that at the end of the year, we'll have a video sort of capturing and summarizing all that we've found about the SCU fire for the last 3 years. But we're going to continue Diablo Range Revealed and expose even more places to you that you may have never heard of that are right in your backyard. and we were just talking earlier today about doing an astronomy event because much of the Diablo Range is actually darker than the Sierra, even though it's closer to a lot of bigger populations. And that darkness is a sign of the intactness of this landscape. We're at the basic research phase of getting to know the area, having scientists take a look at it while we continue our work of preservation. Any other questions?
Yeah, just a little bit to build off of what Seth just said. So another part of that question is that because fires are so rare, are these plants fire followers? So a number of the plants that we showed here are actually listed and labeled as fire followers, like the golden eardrops or the whispering bells or the fire poppies or you know, a variety of others. They are actually labeled as fire followers. So those are kind of the holy grail of this project, was to get out and find those, because they have a limited amount of time to exist, because they need fire or hot temperatures or smoke to stratify their seeds and germinate. So we really utilized that, you know, to get out to these areas and learn more about them and hope to find these individuals. So pretty cool, you know, and also, as you know, Seth was mentioning, the diversity and the geology and soil types and things like that. Whenever you add fire to chaparral areas, you know, chaparral areas have evolved essentially with fire either being lit by humans or lightning. And so some of the plants have evolved to have fire, and they need to have fire in order for them to exist. Some of them have been choked out by years of basically stopping and preventing wildfires. So when wildfires are able to come into these areas, you get just basically a blank slate restart to a landscape due to, you know, removing competition and adding nutrients to these lands. Pretty cool. Any other questions? Well, right on. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this evening, or I guess afternoon into evening. Thank you for all of our speakers today, and thank you to the state parks for, you know, helping us with Tesla and helping host us with this. I really encourage all of you to check out our iNaturalist projects that we have. There's incredible information one can glean, and more importantly, I really impress upon everyone who's tuned into this to get out into the hills, get out into this SCU burn zone, and really learn for yourself. See these places for yourself. Document in your mind or in a photo how they change over time, because surely they won't look the same from year to year. And eventually there'll be a time where you say to yourself, wow, I remember looking at that 10 years ago and that doesn't look anything the way it looks now. We found this cool thing there. It'd be hard to find now for whatever that variable may be. So get out into the hills, go for a hike with your friends and family, and learn everything you can. It's pretty cool. Oh,
I'll add another thing there too, which is Frenchie mentioned the deer zone section of the SCU fires, the 3,000 acres at Morgan Territory, Round Valley, and Los Vaqueros. And that's the closest area for a lot of people to really see what has happened as a result of the fires. It's one of the threads we'll be really exploring in this video, and it's close at home, easy to get to. But if you want to explore further south in the Diablo Range, places like Henrico or so on, I can't recommend enough just driving to San Jose, go up Mount Hamilton, go onto the backside of Mount Hamilton. Because of all the rain and the cold and the snow up on those higher peaks, that area east of Mount Hamilton, down into San Antonio Valley, over to Del Puerto Canyon, has really been delayed. Spring has been delayed there. It's in full force now, but this is a perfect time to go out there and get a sense of this huge area right in your own backyard. And once you get to San Antonio Valley, you get to a junction where you can drive down Del Puerto Canyon and maybe back up Corral Hollow Road to get to Livermore, or you can go north on Mines Road to Livermore. And all those places are new to most people. San Antonio Valley right now has the best wildflower displays we've seen of the year. I don't know how long that's going to last, but if you've never been to San Antonio Valley on the east side of Mount Hamilton, make it a point. So enjoy your spring, and we're coming into summer fast. The wildflowers are really The timing is really based on the heat phases we have. When we get extreme heat, that speeds everything up. So get out now.
Thanks, everybody. And thank you so much, Joanne, for helping us with this broadcast this afternoon.